Well, good morning, everybody. Jeff Slakey here on Daybreak. I have a great guest in studio who has spent many of hours behind the old microphone at the old radio ranch. It's been a long time since we've seen her. Tammey Newton.
Hi, good morning.
How
I'm
are you?
excited to be here.
It's nice to have
I
you
feel
here.
rusty.
So it's been quite a while.
Yeah.
We've had you on over the years. He sat in, filled in a couple times, I
Yeah.
think, too, and have some good talks. It's been a long up and down path since we last saw you here on
Yeah.
the radio,
Yeah.
and folks may follow along with you and things that have been going on in your life on social media. We'll give you those links as we progress through here. But talk to me a little bit about, I know why you're here today, but talk to me a little bit about what has transpired over the last couple years since we saw you running in the 35th back in 2014.
Oh my gosh. Those are some great memories that
Yeah.
are actually popping up a lot in the Facebook feed
Uh-huh.
right now. Gosh, ran for office in 2014 and obviously was not successful in my campaign bid.
Sure.
But had a great time. It was a great experience. It was something that honestly I actually think everybody should do and have that to kind of understand even better what that process is, which has made me so much more passionate about really encouraging people to get out and vote once you understand that process. And not too long after that, actually, in February of 2015, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And so I had a busy couple of years. I joke of being in and out of surgery pretty much every 3 to 6 months for a while.
Wow.
And of course, that caused a lot of changes in my career. I had been working in nonprofit and didn't have medical insurance, and so had to change jobs. I did actually work through the whole thing, but adjusted hours, and so it kind of put my, I would say, my career on a different path or a bit of a hiatus in some ways as well. It was disruptive at best, and not necessarily in a bad way. I do think all things have purpose, but it's been a interesting couple of years of focusing on moments and focusing on survival, and then just sort of transitioning to answering some bigger questions about who am I now and where am I going.
So explain to those, including myself, what the medical definitions are of breast cancer. What portions of the body does it all impact? Is it both breasts, if you will? Break this down for the layman.
Great questions. There are multiple types of breast cancer, which is the important thing to understand. So not all are the same. I actually had a girlfriend go through this at the same time. We were a few weeks behind each other in diagnosis, and she had DCIS and I had ILC, completely different, one being ductal and one being lobular. And since then, I've had two other girlfriends who have been diagnosed, and one of them had both, and one of them had completely different kind of cancer. And then the way they present is different. So it's interesting. As I went through this, I had a lot of nurses asking me if they could see photos of what my breast looked like, because I didn't have a lump, and the way that it presented was different from how some of the others presented. So it can impact different parts of your body. I am considered, or was considered, a stage 3B metastatic because it had metastasized to my lymph nodes. Usually when it does that, it's not they don't like that. That scares the doctors a little bit, because that means that the cancer's left its local area and actually invaded other parts of the body, and those cancer cells are out and about. So it's very different. It is a very complicated, you don't know this, sort of, as a person who doesn't know someone who's gone through cancer or hasn't gone through it themselves to start the research, you sort of just buy into, oh, well, our gold standard is that you're diagnosed and this is how we treat it, and the end result is hopefully this. And once you're in the midst of it and it's your body and you start researching it, it's kind of mind-boggling how a lot is opinion. My pathology came back and staged me at a 2B, but my provider staged me at a 3B. So even in the midst of working with all of my providers, there were contradictions in staging, there were contradictions in treatment recommendations, there were just contradictions or differences of opinion all along the way. So you really have to research.
You mentioned not having a lump, and I know self-examination is key.
Yeah.
How did you if you didn't have a lump,
Yeah.
how did you know to go get a mammogram? Was it just a time for your annual, or what caused you to go?
No, so I was 43 and actually probably wouldn't have had a mammogram for a few more years. And and I always joke I only needed one, so I did get did get out of the rest of them for life. But I had a change in how it looked visually, how the breast looked visually. So it was harder and smaller, so it was changing shape. My nipple had retracted, and that wasn't normal. And then I had what looked like sort of a pressure band, or you know how if you have a rubber band on your arm too long or something, you get that indentation. I had that, and I Googled that because I checked, noticing these differences. I checked and I thought, well, I'd been exercising a lot. I'd lost a lot of weight. I'm 43. Maybe, I don't know what, maybe this is normal. Googled it and actually saw that that was along the lymphatic line. And that's when I said, okay, I've got to get in and see somebody.
After your diagnosis, February of 15, it was your first surgery just a month later.
Yeah.
Is that normally how fast that takes?
It moves so fast. All of my girlfriends who have been through it, once you're diagnosed, the first thing they want to do is actually a biopsy. So I was diagnosed on February 11th. On February 13, I kind of classify that as my first surgery. I had my biopsy, and they took 1.3 centimeters of tissue out in that biopsy. And so if you think about it, that's actually some tumor sizes. That's a lot.
Okay.
And then had the mastectomies in March. What's interesting is really how fast it does move. My provider had called a surgeon, and that surgeon called me before I had my biopsy. So between February 11 and February 13, I got a call from a surgeon's office saying, we want to schedule you for your consult.
Wow.
And I was at the office, and I said, I'm sorry, my consult. And she said, yes, whether, and I said, for what? And I feel bad for the scheduler. And she says, well, we need to talk about whether or not you want to do a unilateral or bilateral mastectomy. And handled it well on the phone and scheduled the appointment, and remember putting my back against the wall and just sliding to the ground in the office and thinking, wow, talk about making it real in that moment. And it's so much that you have to process in such a short period of time. So, yeah, it moves that fast. I was very fortunate that, believe it or not, between that time and my mastectomies, I was at least able to go sit in on a Harmony Hill retreat and get some more information and talk with people who had been through it. And I kind of call it the secret, not so secret club. Once you say you have cancer, you have so many people who come out of the woodwork to support you and share their experience and let you know where they've been and what they've been through and give resources. It's absolutely incredible.
Well, let's talk about this. I was just going to ask you about this. You mentioned your girlfriends a couple times.
Yeah.
You just mentioned Harmony Hill. Let's talk about the support structure that springs up around you when this happens.
You know, when you're first diagnosed, there is a huge support structure. And I say first diagnosed because cancer is long term. My last surgery was just September of 2016, right? So, I mean, it was basically 2 years. And I opted out of the chemo and radiation. So it was really a pretty quick process in a lot of ways because of how I chose my treatment. You have so many people who are there in the beginning, but it's a marathon. It's not a sprint. And at some point, people kind of lose how to identify with you, and you lose your own identity because so much of your identity is about cancer. But the support that's there and those that stay, it is pretty amazing. I mean, I had, believe it or not, I had one of our county commissioners, when he heard I was diagnosed, pop up to my office and say, hey, here's my guy. Here's my oncologist, and I trust this guy, and he is amazing. And I had girlfriends who would reach out and say, what questions do you have? I've been there, I've done that. And through their giving, I think part of that, I blogged originally, I know I blogged originally to keep myself sane. Like, I needed to process the information somehow. But I also, throughout that process, found that it was a great way to support people. I had folks from Florida sending me books that had gone through it. I mean, it was just absolutely amazing. I had letters coming into the office from community members. So much support. It was just, people are amazing.
Is the blogging what led you into the authorship of your book?
Yeah, so I have had a lot of folks say to me, "You need to turn this into a book," and it's one of those things, just sort of yeah. And how do you go about doing that? And then it just really struck me in the last year that no, this is because it does tackle. I tackled pretty much everything, including the ugly. There are things I left out. There were personal things I was going through in my life when I was blogging. The blog is very much about cancer and my cancer choices and treatment options and why I chose the path that I chose for me personally. And there were things going on in my personal life, like a divorce and things like that, that I'll tackle in the book that will add, I think, more depth, because it really will take not just cancer, but finding your own power, finding your own voice, experiencing so much loss on every level, from honestly when I was diagnosed, from job loss because I had to make a change, to my marriage, to my house. It's not a cheap disease. So everything in my life, getting to that point where, asking myself, what is left? I feel like scorched earth at this point in time, to also understanding that through that short period of time, also finding love and finding support mechanisms and finding amazing people and finding yourself again, your true self.
So talk to me about this. The working title is Killer Left Boob. Is that what we're looking at here?
That will probably change. I have a feeling that once we get into process and close to production, I will have some feedback from the publisher.
Sure.
And my writing coach on that one.
Is it going to kind of be a look in a daily journal type of read for the reader to go through the process on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, or is it a time for you to reflect on certain aspects of the cancer and how you worked through it?
I'm organizing it into chapters based kind of on those daily experiences, but I'm going to lump those in and throw some lessons and some humor and some lessons I've learned and some humor in there for folks. And a daily read, I'll leave the blog up, I imagine, unless for some reason, it would make sense to modify it. Mm-hmm. Obviously, once we change the name, we'll modify it. But really, it's kind of looking at finding your power and looking at choices and just reaching out and reaching up. And so I don't have all my titles together yet, and it's interesting because I've heard a lot of people say that sort of comes at the end of the chapter as you're putting it all together. But yeah, so it'll be chunked into healthy titles that'll encapsulate those daily.
We are friends on social media, and so I followed your progress here as well. And one of the things that was an interesting follow was your tattoo that you had.
Yeah.
And this... tell us about that whole process.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. It's interesting. There are a lot of decisions to make. And I had my fiance, Griff, ask me a very critical question in the very beginning, because at first I thought, I'm not going to go through the pain and the frustration and all the surgeries with reconstruction. Forget about it. I'm going to leave this the way it is. And for those that don't know, it's a cavity because it's your chest wall. So it's literally a divot in your chest when you do that. And it's not attractive. And it's never the way that it was. So your brain has a lot to process with that, right? And so the tattoos, he and I were talking, and he asked me a really important question because I was saying it's no big deal. I don't need to have them. It's just vanity, whatever. And he said to me, are you confusing vanity with identity? And that was so profound. And so I had to think on that for a while and ask myself, is it vanity? Is it identity? Is it how I see myself? And how do I picture myself healthy and complete? What is complete for me? And will having this very violent representation every day when I look in the mirror be something that I'm happy with? Is that going to meet my identity? So we were talking about, what do you do? Because nothing looks the same. They get as close as they can.
Sure.
They do the best they can, and my surgeon was phenomenal, but it's not what it was.
Right.
So I joke, it's like being a teenager again, because you're like getting used to your body again,
Uh-huh.
and learning to like it. But, it's 11.5-inch scars on either side. And then with nipple reconstruction, there's that scarring. So there's a lot of scarring. And so even after reconstruction, there's still this, you still don't look like you, and you still have this reminder of things that were imposed upon you. Yes, to get healthy. So I'm not saying, no one ties you down or forces you to do one thing or the other. But you didn't really have a choice. For health, you had to make decisions, and the best decision you could possibly make. If you're healthy, you would never do these things. So I started thinking about tattoos, and Griff gets the credit for that, because he said, what about? I'd never, A, never had a tattoo, and B, never gone looking for images like that.
Uh-huh.
And so started Googling it, found an amazing artist in Seattle, first lady. Her tattoos are from Hardy originally, when he used to
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. And she's also an artist. And so I met with her and I said, hey, here's my vision. I want a phoenix on the right, and I want Yaitsu the dragon on the left. The dragon who's one of the dragon sons, protect her against physical harm. My own thing.
Sure.
But really what it is it's claiming that back.
Yeah.
So it was over a year of tattoo appointments, and those sessions being 3. I think the longest session was 5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, in the chair. But now I see myself, and I see me, and I see my identity, and I'm seeing beauty again, which may sound like it falls into vanity, but again, we all have those things that we like and appreciate about ourselves, and we all have those things we wish could be different. And I have some pretty jarring images still. I look back, because I've taken photos throughout the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
Jeff, I look back at some of those photos, I get queasy. I don't know how I went through that. I don't know how I wasn't vomiting at the time, because it is such a harsh photo to see. And everything from the bruising to the staples, of all things, after the mastectomies. Yeah.
Was this the first tattoo like this the artist had done?
No, she does a lot of mastectomy tattoos, scar cover-ups.
Huh.
Yeah, she's amazing.
So
Absolutely
what's
amazing.
next for you now?
So next is the book. Looking also at doing some speaking, some writing, and more writing,
Would
not
the
just the book.
Would
But
the speaking be strictly to a cancer crowd, or would it be more about how you can overcome things?
it's more motivational and how you can overcome. I think there are so many lessons that are applicable from this. And the other thing I would say too is that you can't take one person's experience or one person's pain and compare it. And that's why I think so much of it does cross over, because whether it's this specific type of situation or health situation, or just really anything in general, and how do I look at these moments and appreciate them? Because I tell you, I remember after diagnosis that really focusing on the day, like I focused on that 24 hours. What do I need to know today? Sometimes hour by hour. And then getting to the point finally where I was looking ahead 3 months, and then 6 months, and then planning for a year, and now looking and planning for life. So that lesson alone, I think, is so applicable across the board for so many different things.
For somebody listening today who may have never done a self-exam, may have never gotten a mammogram, when you first noticed a difference in your body, was there a time that you maybe saw the change happening but didn't want to acknowledge it, or as soon as you saw something different, you got online and started looking it up?
It took me a couple months. And I don't know that it was denial. I think it was just confusion because I kept seeing the changes and I kept looking for a lump
Right.
and just not finding a lump. And actually, when I had my breast exam with my gynecologist, he didn't find a lump. And but he still sent me for the mammogram, which was sort of lesson one on advocating for yourself because he and I had that dialogue. Well, I don't feel anything. And are you sure that this is different and that it's been changing? And pretty familiar with him. So yeah, I'm pretty sure. So he sent me anyway, but there was a moment where I think he questioned whether or not he needed to send me as a healthy 43-year-old woman for that mammogram for what changes I was saying that I was experiencing. I think also in my situation, I didn't have medical benefits through my work, but I had medical benefits through my ex-husband. And had I not had benefits, it probably would have been really easy for me to ignore it because I didn't have pain and I didn't have a lump and I didn't have inflammation. I didn't have all those things that they throw out as the big red flags. And I'd already waited long enough with my own confusion in, is this something or not, that it had metastasized. And which shocked a lot of my doctors because they all thought, hey, we caught this early. She's young, she's healthy. I literally had my surgeon say that to me before my mastectomies. You're young, you're healthy, you'll heal from this quickly. I'm not healthy or I wouldn't be having this done.
Yeah.
So, there was a delay. But it wasn't fear, it was really confusion as to whether or not it was something to worry about.
Do you see yourself moving forward as a figurehead to move forward this conversation or as someone who is able to facilitate behind the scenes?
That is a great question. I would like a nice blend of both. One thing I will say is that I think it's important that we spearhead the conversation because, breasts are a great apparent topic and sales tool for many, many things. And yet when we go to actually talk about women's health and talk about breasts from either a breastfeeding perspective and the utilitarian purposes for them, or this kind of situation where there's a medical, situation in wanting to be able to discuss it, we have a hard time finding our words. I mean, one of the questions I asked you was, is there anything I can't say?
Yeah.
Because I don't know if there's a part of the anatomy that I can't speak of or I have to allude to because Lord knows we can't do that, right? But we can sell burgers, but we can't talk about, this situation. So I do want to help folks have that dialogue. And I had so many friends say to me, I'm just not bold enough to live my life out loud, to share this kind of personal detail, to talk about my breasts and breast cancer. And I don't judge anybody for whatever path and what they choose, but there's still stigma attached, and there's still, I think, a little bit of shame also attached. And so I would like to continue to have those conversations and live that out loud and help folks be able to find their comfort and find their voice.
I know you're on Facebook. Is it a public page? Is it a private page so people can connect with you if they need to, if they want to ask you questions?
Yeah.
You're also on Twitter as well.
I am.
Let's see. How do we do this here? Tammey Newton, at Tammey Newton, TammeyNewton is on Twitter.
Yes.
Same for Facebook, or?
I have no idea. No, I'm Grable Newton on Facebook. Okay. I hyphenated my main name, so GRABLE -Newton. NEWTON, and Tammey is TAMMEY. I made it public when I ran for office because I didn't want anybody to say I was hiding anything.
So a good outlet for you to connect with folks if they want to talk more about this.
Yes, and also the blog, killerleftboob.com. And I've had folks reach out to me on social media, on the blog, and folks just wanting an ear or to say, hey, me too, and have a comrade in arms, if you will, which has been really fantastic.
Well, it's been nice talking with you again.
You too.
It's good to see you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm so happy that things are working out well on many fronts of your life right now.
Yes. Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
The dawn, the sun's rising.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Tammey Newton, thank you.
Thank you.